Another day, another crazy report about Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. Tonight, NBC News, citing a law enforcement official, reports that federal investigators are looking into his travel into the Bahamas with women, and specifically whether those women were paid to travel for sex, which could violate federal law. According to CBS News, Gaetz allegedly traveled with, and I'm quoting here, a marijuana entrepreneur and hand surgeon named Jason Pirozzolo, who allegedly paid for the travel expenses, accommodations, and female escorts. Pirozzolo did not respond to requests for comment. CBS News also reporting that investigators want to know if Gaetz was accepting paid escorts in exchange for political access or legislative favors. Gaetz denies that he engaged in sex trafficking, including with a 17-year-old girl who was reported to be part of the investigation. A spokesperson told CBS News Representative Gaetz has never paid for sex, nor has he had sex with an underage girl. What began with blaring headlines about sex trafficking has now turned into a general fishing exercise about vacations and consensual relationships with adults. Important to remember as these stories keep breaking, Matt Gaetz is not some plucky young guy who made a name for himself on his own. He's the son of the former president of the Florida Senate, whose connections and deep pockets helped his son become a state senator and a member of Congress. In 2008, Gaetz was charged with DUI after getting pulled over for speeding in his daddy's BMW. He refused a breathalyzer test, and the charges were ultimately dropped. This is someone who's always coasted on his privilege, so it's no surprise he glommed onto another child of privilege whose dad opened doors for him, Donald Trump. When Gaetz' associates started being questioned by investigators last year, the New York Times reports Gaetz sought a blanket pardon from Trump, who had been loyal to for years. Not clear how much Gaetz knew about the investigation at the time. Gaetz didn't get the pardon, but after a long delay, Trump did come out today with a brief, carefully worded statement claiming the congressman had never directly asked him for a pardon, adding that Gaetz has totally denied the accusations against him. Totally denied. It's one of the most damning things Donald Trump can say about a person. I mean, remember Roy Moore, the Alabama theocrat credibly accused of sexual misconduct with underage girls? Moore denied those allegations, but they likely cost Republicans the Senate seat. And here's what Trump said at the time.
Well, he denies it. Look, he denies it. I mean, he totally denies it. He says it didn't happen. And, you know, you have to listen to him also.
What about Vladimir Putin, who our intelligence agencies say meddled in U.S. elections to help Trump?
President Putin, he just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be. President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today.
Then there's Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who a U.S. intel report says approved an operation to capture or kill journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
The king firmly denied any knowledge of it. The denial was very strong. It wasn't like there was a question in his mind. The denial was very, very strong. The denial was not only a denial, it was a very firm denial.
Roy Moore, Gaetz, Mohammed bin Salman, Putin, they all denied it. Case closed. For the latest on the Gaetz saga, I'm joined by Orlando Sentinel columnist Scott Maxwell, who's been writing about Matt Gaetz and his career and roots in Florida. And Scott, I wonder, how this all plays in Florida, where Gaetz and his father, particularly, are extremely known entities.
Yeah, they are. Back in Florida, Don Gaetz was pretty respected. Matt Gaetz was known as Baby Gaetz when he started to develop a career, thanks large to his father. But most of it is par for the course. In fact, one of the things that I have been writing about lately is there's sort of this feigned shock and awe of pearl clutching among particularly Republicans who seem to act like they're surprised by the stuff with Matt Gaetz. I don't know anything about the current accusations. They still have yet to play out. But there's plenty that has been absolutely proven about Gaetz's behavior in the past that was wide in the open, that we've written about for years. And folks down here didn't seem to care until now when it was a political liability.
Say more about that. What do you mean?
Just to give you one example, one of the reasons we followed Gaetz here in Orlando, it wasn't sexy, but because he was involved in asking Florida's governor to stop Orlando's airport boy with appointees who tried to mount a bid and mount a coup and hand out these no-bid legal contracts. That may not sound like something your viewers probably care about, but let me tell you something. That is Orlando's swamp. And every one of your viewers in every town in America, they have their own swamps. And while Gaetz was up there screaming about draining the swamp in Washington, he was trying to fill the sludge here. And in fact, one of those board members that he helped, that he was buddies with appointed, was the one you just mentioned at the top of the block, who's being investigated for taking a flight to the Bahamas with. And all of this stuff feeds together. There were lots of questions. There have been investigations. But most of the time when Matt got cornered, he would start, screaming about Antifa or undocumented immigrants, and it was red meat for the crowd that would usually end up supporting him again.
Wait, I'm sorry. So, I mean, clearly, there's congressmen have all kinds of connections. You're talking about the marijuana entrepreneur and hand surgeon, Mr. Perazzolo?
As a matter of fact, I have pulled up emails I had with Dr. Perazzolo and Matt Gaetz just today from 2 years ago, when I was trying to understand why Matt Gaetz, and I don't know that this has been widely reported, tried to make Dr. Perazzolo Florida's Surgeon General, even though his expertise seemed to be medical marijuana at the time. That one didn't pan out. As a consolation prize, he got to be a member of the Orlando Airport Board and control about $2 billion worth of contracts.
Oh, so it's established. These guys have a relationship. There's some association between the two as just a matter of record. The question of, the allegations themselves being distinct, what you're saying is there's a connection there.
Oh, there's definitely. I can share my emails with you. Yes, I've swapped notes with both of them about this, and they didn't deny that. And that's the thing, Chris. A lot of this stuff has been open. The shock about the sex games talk. More than a year ago, one of Gaetz's former legislators came right out and accused and said Gaetz that created a sex game when he was in the legislature, where young male legislators scored points based on how many people they could sleep with. And the accusation was that they got fewer amounts of points for sleeping with lobbyists and the most for sleeping with, say, another married legislator. This has been out for a year. Chris Latvala was the legislator who said it. There are suddenly people who seem to be surprised and interested in it, but it's been reported down here for quite a while.
Scott Maxwell with some fascinating context about the world of Florida politics. Always lots to learn about that state. Thanks for sharing your reporting tonight.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.